Mr. Miller signed a new co-developed protocol with National Chief Bellegarde to move forward on much-needed reforms of Indigenous child and family services. It should be up to Indigenous peoples to decide what is best for their children, families, and communities, and with this protocol, we're taking another important step in the right direction. We also announced new investments to expand access to cultural, emotional, and mental health support services for those affected by the national tragedy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, as well as the federal Indian Day Schools Settlement Agreement. To continue walking the road of reconciliation, we must work with survivors, families, communities on the support they need. There's still much to be done, but yesterday's announcements are another important step along our shared path. Au cours des 2 derniers jours, nous avons tenu une rencontre virtuelle du Conseil des ministres. C'était l'occasion pour notre équipe de se rassembler après un début d'année mouvementé et d'établir nos priorités pour les semaines et les mois à venir. Nous avons d'abord parlé de la pandémie, de ses conséquences sur l'économie et de ce que notre gouvernement peut et doit faire pour combattre le racisme systémique. Je vais commencer par nos discussions concernant la pandémie. Lundi, nous nous sommes entretenus avec la Dr Tam, administratrice en chef de la santé publique, la Dr Nimmer, conseillère scientifique en chef, et le Dr Naylor, qui dirige le groupe de travail sur l'immunité face à la COVID-19. Depuis le début, notre réponse s'appuie sur la science et les données, et c'est ce qu'on va continuer à faire lorsqu'on commence à reprendre certaines activités. C'est la seule façon de protéger les Canadiens et d'en finir pour le bon avec la COVID-19. Earlier this week, we held a 2-day virtual cabinet retreat. We talked about how the virus is progressing across the country, as well as our response so far. Later today, we'll be releasing a public health modeling update on COVID-19 in Canada. We'll have more details then, but for now, I want to give a quick overview. Last week, we said that nationally, the number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths is declining over time. That is still the case today. The situation is stabilizing in Canada because Canadians did their part and followed public health instructions. But we still have to be very careful. Things can change quickly. As Dr. Tam will explain later, we still have some hotspots in some parts of the country, including in long-term care facilities and agricultural work settings. So as we continue to gradually reopen the economy, we have to remain vigilant. We have to keep following public health advice. La COVID-19 a provoqué non seulement une crise sanitaire, mais une crise économique. C'était l'un des grands thèmes que nous avons abordés au cours de la rencontre du Conseil des ministres. Beaucoup de gens n'ont pas pu aller travailler pendant plusieurs semaines, tandis que d'autres ont perdu leur emploi. Et bien que tous les secteurs de l'économie aient ressenti les conséquences de la pandémie, certains ont été plus durement touchés que d'autres. Pour mieux comprendre les conséquences de la pandémie sur notre économie, on va publier un portrait de l'économie et des finances publiques plus tard cet après-midi. Le ministre Morneau aura plus de détails à vous fournir là-dessus, mais voici ce qu'il faut retenir. Quand la pandémie nous a frappés, beaucoup de gens ont perdu leur job du jour au lendemain. Ils ne savaient pas comment ils allaient nourrir leur famille ou payer leurs factures. Face à un défi sans précédent, notre gouvernement avait 2 choix. On pouvait laisser les Canadiens se débrouiller et espérer que tout ça se terminerait rapidement, ou on pouvait agir rapidement pour aider les Canadiens. On a choisi d'appuyer les Canadiens. Aujourd'hui, le Canada a l'un des plans les plus ambitieux et exhaustifs dans le monde pour lutter contre la pandémie. On a augmenté le soutien financier accordé aux groupes vulnérables comme les aînés et les étudiants. On a offert des prêts aux entreprises qui avaient des problèmes de liquidité. On a aidé les employeurs à réembaucher leurs employés et on a soutenu ceux qui avaient perdu leur emploi. On parle de près de 11 millions de Canadiens qui ont reçu l'aide de la subvention salariale d'urgence ou de la PCU. Notre gouvernement a dépensé pour pouvoir empêcher que les Canadiens et trop à s'endetter. On a pu faire ça parce que le Canada est entré dans cette crise sur une base solide, avec un ratio de la dette nette nationale par rapport au PIB considérablement plus bas que les autres pays du G7. Notre gouvernement était en bonne position pour venir en aide aux Canadiens et jeter les bases qui vont permettre à notre économie de rebondir. 4 mois plus tard, on a ralenti la propagation du virus et on est maintenant au stade où on peut voir certains secteurs de l'économie rouvrir. Et avec des taux d'intérêt historiquement bas, le coût d'emprunt demeure bas et donc notre gouvernement va continuer d'investir dans les Canadiens et dans notre économie. C'est clair que la relance présente plusieurs défis. Certains secteurs vont rebondir plus rapidement que d'autres. Certaines personnes vont être capables de trouver un nouvel emploi rapidement, mais ça va prendre plus de temps pour d'autres. Alors, au moment où on passe au stade de la relance, les Canadiens peuvent compter sur nous de toujours être à leur côté. To better understand the impacts of COVID-19 on our economy, we will be releasing a fiscal and economic snapshot this afternoon. Minister Morneau will have more to say on this later today, but for now, I want to talk about the main takeaways. When the pandemic first hit, a lot of people lost their jobs overnight. They didn't know how they were going to feed their families or pay their bills. Faced with this unprecedented challenge, our government had 2 options. We could sit back, let Canadians fend for themselves and hope that it would all be over soon, or we could swiftly and substantially choose to support Canadians. We chose to support Canadians. As we measure the cost of helping Canadians, we shouldn't forget that the cost of doing nothing would have been far more to both our health care and our economy. This is not and has not been a time for tightening of belts or for austerity. By building a bridge for Canadians through this crisis, we can and will build a stronger, more resilient Canada. Today, Canada has one of the most ambitious and comprehensive plans to counter the economic impacts of this pandemic. We increased financial support to vulnerable groups like seniors and students. We provided loans to businesses struggling with cash flow, helped employers rehire their employees, and supported those who had lost their jobs. In fact, nearly 11 million Canadians have been supported through the Emergency Wage Subsidy or the CERB. Our government took on debt to reduce the amount that Canadians themselves had to take on. We were able to do this because Canada entered this crisis on strong footing with a net debt to GDP ratio considerably lower than the rest of the G7. Our government was well positioned to be there for Canadians and lay the groundwork for our economy to bounce back. 4 months later, we've slowed down the progression of the virus significantly, and we're now seeing parts of the economy reopen. And historically low interest rates mean manageable borrowing costs as we continue to invest in Canadians and in the economy. Now, the road to recovery will not be an easy one. Some sectors will bounce back more quickly than others. Some people will be able to find work, but others won't right away. But as we move through into this recovery phase, Canadians can count on us to always be in their corner. Over the past 2 days, our team also talked about what concrete steps this government must take to fight racism and build a more inclusive Canada. Because here are the facts. Prejudice, discrimination, and violence are a lived reality for far too many Canadians. And it's the result of systems which all too often condone, normalize, perpetrate, and perpetuate inequality and injustice against racialized people. Our government pledged to work with racialized communities and Indigenous peoples to address systemic racism. Over the last 5 years, we've invested in mental health resources for Black youth and worked to close the gaps in services for Indigenous communities. And we now have Canada's anti-racism strategy, which has begun its work to change the way we do things and break down barriers. We've made progress, but it's nowhere near enough. So Cabinet has put together a work plan for the summer months. Our goal is to come up with strong policies that will help eliminate barriers facing Indigenous peoples, racialized people, and persons with disabilities. Minister Lametti is working on justice reforms. Minister Blair is focused on modernizing policing structures and updating standards regarding the use of force. Ministers Baines and Ng are looking at improving access to capital and generating more capacity. Ministers Mendicino and Qualtrough are exploring ways to ensure better protection for temporary foreign workers. And Ministers Blair and Miller are committed to co-developing a legislative framework which recognizes First Nations policing as an essential service and expand the number of communities served by First Nations policing. We have our work cut out for us, but we're ready. Fighting systemic racism, unconscious bias, and discrimination is a top priority for our government, and we will continue to listen and work with communities and allies to build a better Canada. I want to end today by congratulating Bob Rae on his appointment as Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Rae has dedicated his life to serving Canada, most recently as Canada's Special Envoy on Humanitarian and Refugee Issues, and before that as Canada's Special Envoy to Myanmar. In these roles, he worked closely with the UN and the international community to help lead Canada's humanitarian efforts. I know he will build on the work of Ambassador Marc-André Blanchard and defend our interests and our values with integrity. Je tiens aussi à remercier l'ambassadeur Blanchard pour ses nombreuses années de service exceptionnels. Marc-André a su renforcer nos amitiés et bâtir des ponts avec des nouveaux partenaires tout au long de son mandat. Je lui souhaite le meilleur des succès pour